Perfect. Come on. Okay. I think I might have to do this again. So let's close this out. Give me 1 second.
No problem. I heard yesterday some people were having problems with zooming into Facebook groups.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
fiddly D. I hope that's not true. Oh, well, if not, all the people, a lot of people gave me, since they wouldn't be here at this time, their questions. So we'll still get them answered. So when do you move? When's the big move?
Saturday. So.
Oh, girl. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. I know, I'm like, took the week off Instagram to like give, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much more time in my schedule. All of a sudden, I've noticed already just in one day. So,
Right? Oh my gosh.
yeah, but I'm like, okay, I need to conserve some energy.
Well, okay. It seems like it's not going to go live in the group. This is okay. Well, that's all right. We'll just go ahead and we'll just do the recording, and I'll answer the questions. I'll ask the questions for them, and we'll just kind of go from there. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All righty, Cassandra, I'm so honored to have you here with me and with the podcast community, with the Collaborative Healing Spot. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share a little bit about your knowledge about trauma, relationships, the nervous system, and how our community and all the people who listen to this can start to work on healing these things. So a little bit about how Cassandra and I met. I'm pretty sure I stalked her on Instagram about a year and a half ago. And at this time I was really seeking out community. So I was like, would you be okay? Would it be all right to talk to me for a second? And it was so sweet. She generously donated some time, and we chatted and we talked a little bit about business. And it was just, we've been kind of keeping tabs and following each other ever since. So we knew that we both, kind of very similar, not only backgrounds, but also very similar, what we're trying to share with the world. So please share with the community a little bit about what you do, what lights you up, and what you are sharing with your community and the people that listen to you.
Oh, well, thank you first and foremost for having me. It's always a privilege to be brought into somebody else's community, space, podcast. So I appreciate it so much. So my name is Cassandra Solano. My pronouns are she, they. I live in North Orange County, California. I don't live on a mansion on the cliffs. People think Orange County. It's like, no, I live in the suburbs with my husband. It's both of our second marriage, and 3 kids, and my bonus daughter is here with us, once a month. So we run this business together, this coaching business. He helps me with some of the back end stuff, bookkeeping and all that. And he's a stay-at-home dad. And that was a decision we made about 2 years ago. We thought was going to be temporary, just for the summer. And it turned into kind of a full-time thing. So that's a little bit about me and my family life. I graduated from social work school at UCLA back in 2012, so 9 years ago. And I worked in public mental health for a long time. And then I started this coaching business about 2.5 years ago as a side hustle, just to make some money while my kids were at their dad's house. And it ended up becoming my full-time gig. And I'm really passionate about educating and helping people have trauma-informed relationships. So really understanding how their past and how their past impacted them, the kind of patterns, behaviors, and beliefs that they formed because of their past trauma, family experiences, systemic, cultural programming and issues,
Mm,
and how all that is coming into play in their relationship, helping them learn how to ground and regulate, and heal their nervous systems so they can have great communication and intimacy and all the things that they are looking for. I think it's so heartbreaking that those of us that have had past histories of trauma, and most of the time not from our own fault at all,
right.
right? Um, are somehow like doomed in a way to have unhealthy relationships. Like that's just
Right.
really unfair to me.
Absolutely. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree, especially with that statement. Like, it almost feels like it's like because I came from this family dynamic that I had I didn't have any choice in it. Now I'm doomed to have these relationships. And I love the fact that that's kind of what is drawing you
Yeah.
to help heal, these types of maybe forgotten souls, who feel like there's
Mhm.
no hope, to finding love, which is not true. Like, I'm curious about your story. So this is your second marriage, what happened was your first marriage something that kind of also, you know, drove your soul to feel like this was part of your mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So I say I had 20 years of toxic relationships. I mean, pretty much from my first little boyfriend at, 12, 13 years old, who was actually kind of this like scary cholo gangster, like, but I felt like I couldn't say no because he wanted me to be with him. So I was like, I guess I have to. And
Mhm.
even though I was scared and didn't even, like him, I just, already those people pleasing habits were in place. And from there it went to, just more and more toxic relationships. All the way till I was in a very actually physically abusive relationship at like 19, 20.
Mm,
So then I met my husband and my ex-husband. And I thought, well, he's not like abusive, like physically abusive. So this is fine. And I was at such a different place of self-awareness, in my own healing journey when he and I met. Um, and as we dated, I started to like go into therapy and like do self-help groups and really changed a lot about my life. And I realized I outgrew that relationship um,
yeah.
long before I left that relationship because I thought, well, you're supposed to make it work if I just keep working on myself and meditate, or I picked up yoga. I like got and I read every self-help book like in the I could find.
Right.
I thought I could like spiritually transcend,
Mhm.
and get what I wanted out of that relationship. And it came to a point where the emotional and psychological abuse got worse over time.
Mm,
I was experiencing major gaslighting in that relationship, which is having my own reality, my own experience, my own like things that I was perceiving, hearing, seeing, constantly told it was wrong and questioned until I started to doubt my own direct felt experience and
mm,
perception. Um, and I realized I hated who I had to be to keep the peace in that relationship. I had to play small. I had to not share opinions on certain things.
mm,
Um, I had to people please and say yes when I wanted to say no.
right.
And it got to the point where I was like almost dying, like this soul death in that
Mm,
relationship, and I had to go, and I was getting yelled at in front of the kids and all that, and I knew it wasn't a good example to set. And my parents didn't have a great relationship either, and I didn't want to continue on that cycle.
mm,
Yeah, and so I got out of that relationship. I had one serious relationship in between my two marriages. That one also wasn't the healthiest. I just say he was also a narcissist, just like a little bit more like charming and good looking. And then we moved in together, and the mask came off, and I was like,
yep.
oh fuck, like
I've
I'm
had
in
one of
this
those. I
situation
get
again. Yep.
it.
So at least that didn't last 10 years. That one was like within a year. I was like, okay, yeah, this isn't the one. And I went back to therapy. I worked with somebody who specialized in working with women who had narcissistic slash alcoholic parents.
Mm,
Um, and, you know, I used to hear, oh, your picker's broken. You just keep picking bad partners.
right.
And it was like, no, I had misattuned neuroception where like I wasn't seeing red flags and green flags correctly.
Right.
I was not connected with my body. I was people pleasing. So I kept ending up in these situations.
Right.
But nobody wants to be in a healthy relationship or a relationship with somebody that's emotionally abusive.
Right.
You know, on some level, that's what was familiar. So, you know, I'm in an amazing relationship now,
Yeah.
but it definitely took some work. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I think one thing I just love about your experience and your history is the fact that it's such a testament to so many women who are trying to move through this, right? Like, I feel like that's the reason why I really gravitated towards your work too, is
Mm,
because I'm always looking for people who are honest and authentic, and they're not only are they knowledgeable from training or whatever, but that their experience actually matches, like they're walking their talk,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like I come from a history, my parents are well, my parents, my father's not a narcissist, and then I've had a
Mm,
series of narcissistic partners. And then thankfully, after some healing, I had to do the work. I had to get therapy. I had to get a specialized therapist or somebody
yeah.
who was trained in trauma, which is so important in order for me to finally, like you said, like heal those, like heal my picker, if you want to put that, out there. But my picker wasn't broken. My, like you said, my perception of what was a red flag versus what was actually, me people pleasing or whatever was completely off. And without that work, I don't think that, like to me, I know I wouldn't have met my husband, and I wouldn't be here being able to share the work that I do. And then same with you. It seems like because of everything is this is why your business is thriving, and this is why you are here supporting so many women in your soul's mission.
Thank
So I
you.
hope people see like what you've overcome and hear really what happens whenever you do put in the energy and time to heal, right?
Yes, and congrats, newlywed-ish, right?
Oh, thank you.
So that's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much.
you bought a home too, right?
Yeah. Oh
So,
my gosh.
hell yeah, congrats. It's
Right,
amazing.
girl. I mean, life is just, I feel like, once you just kind of put it out there in the universe and you're like, I am here to participate in my life. Well, it happens.
Amazing.
You too. Same for you. I know you're like moving and like all these things and like, oh gosh, life.
Mm,
Um, so one question I want to ask you that I ask all of my guests is like, obviously we're still, thankfully we're seeing a lot more hope now with the pandemic and vaccines and all the things. But, what is something that you really learned during this time of lockdown when things were just kind of, I mean, no, but none of us expected any of this, right? So I'm very, very curious.
yeah, I think I knew, you know, and textbooks and science tells us how important connection is,
Mm,
but just how essential it is for us to be around other people, connecting with other people, even if it's just you're out on a walk and you're nod or kind of raise your hand and wave at somebody, or you take that 10 extra seconds to have a little chat while you're checking out at the grocery store and making eye contact
mm,
with the cashier. Just how important even just moments of connection with other people are for our mental health.
yeah.
um it's like, and now I'm just like, I totally believe that like if you're feeling down, depressed, like the number one hack is to like go connect with somebody.
Mm,
And when we're in therapy school, that's the first thing they tell us. The most important part of therapy is building trust and
trust.
rapport, is that
Yeah.
and you don't have to be in therapy or to keep this front of mind.
Right.
It's just those moments of connection to show your nervous system, I'm not alone in the world. I'm not
Mm,
alone in the wild about to be eaten by a pack of wolves.
yep.
Like I'm safe, and there are other people around. And
Yeah.
I remember those early days where we were really isolating and just my husband went and got groceries for our elderly neighbors a couple of times. And just how like precious those kind of neighbor relationships became, of us being like, hey, we got some toilet paper if you need it. And, how important it is, I think, to keep that connection. People were bike riding, and then we were talking outside, distance, but getting to
Yeah.
know neighbors more deeply, and just how like connections are so much more available to us than I think we realize too.
Yes.
But we got
Yeah.
to like put the phone down and just look and notice like what's available to us. So yeah, not a specific answer, but just really like the power of connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that was pretty specific. I mean, there were so many beautiful examples of that, of where connection really matters and how easy it is to find when you do, for God, God forbid, put down the phone, right? But yeah, like I would agree, the connect, and to me, the smile, right? Like missing people's smile, like walking past someone and just smiling, like who knew that that would be something that I would miss so desperately during this time? And thankfully, I can see all the smiles I want now, because people are starting to take off their masks.
Yes.
So I really, part of the work that I love that you do is the nervous system response and understanding how to help people feel safe in their bodies. Because when you are subjected to abuse, emotional of any kind, verbal, physical, whatever, your body starts to feel unsafe. And so this is where those conditioned responses start to kind of go like misfire, or become even more entrenched or validated. So I'm curious, about how you understand the nervous system and how it plays a role in trauma.
So the nervous system unquote is something you learn in school, right? That's like I touch something hot, and then I have these nerves that tell my brain, and then my brain tells my hand to move, and it happens so quickly. And that's kind of like the understanding when we think nervous system, we're like, oh yeah, like some physical sensations,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, right? But it's actually kind of the underlying system for every other system in our body. It impacts the health of our nervous system, impacts our cardiovascular system, our muscle tone, our hormones, like everything. Um, and even in our mental health, right? So like our nervous system is kind of like the foundational system. And what we know is that most data comes in through the body first and then goes up to the brain. So we're actually not receiving or receiving information with our brain first. It's 80% what's called afferent, so from the body up to the brain. And then the brain is like this, has like an algorithm, right? Our brain has this kind of program based off all of our childhood experiences and our cultural conditioning and our education, like blah, blah, blah. And so it like runs this raw data through this like program, and then it spits out this final report or the meaning we make of a situation. What it must mean when somebody like doesn't say hi that we walked by at work and we said hi and they just like kept walking, right? Depending on your background situation, how much you slept the night before, all that, like you're gonna either think, oh, this person is just like, okay, whatever, they didn't see me, not a big deal, moving on with my life. Or, oh my God, why is this person so mad at me? Like, I need to figure this out and I'm gonna like obsess about this all
Right.
day, right? Totally have two different kind of final analysis or like that final report based off of like our programming from that raw data. So a lot of the work I do is to start getting people to get more in contact and, like you said, to feel safe in their bodies, so they can start getting in touch with that raw data, that initial information, the sensations, the emotions, the feelings, the muscle tension, contraction, or relaxation that tells us so much more truth than some people call it intuition, than like what is this thing is telling us.
Yeah.
Right? Because our
Yeah.
brain's number one job is just to keep us alive, not to live our best life ever. It just wants to keep you safe.
Yeah.
So we've all probably heard in some training in a job, like communication is 80% nonverbal. But what does that mean, right? That means that we're constantly scanning the environment for something called neuroception for signals of safety or danger.
Mm,
And that's always on. Some people call it like our internal spidey sense.
mm,
And like I said, that is the thing that trauma can kind of screw it up, where that dial is turned way up and we're
mm.
like hyper vigilant. So we're always like, does this person like me? Or, oh my God, this person that I'm dating didn't text me back right away. Like, what does that mean? Right. And,
Yeah.
or, oh, things are good, but when's the other shoe going to drop?
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or it can be tuned way down where it's like, we just, oh, well, that person blew me off. Like, I don't care. Like, I'll still see them again. Or like, I don't care. I'm just going to like drop it and like whatever. And we can
Right.
just like be so, it's called hyperarousal, where we're not really connected
Right.
and paying attention. So that's kind of just like some basics. And how this has to do with relationships is that if we're not connected with our bodies, if we're not listening to this raw data, if we're not noticing, wow, when I'm with this person, I tend to just slouch and collapse into this protective position, or my whole body feels tight, or my heart is beating, or I have a lump in my throat.
Yeah.
Like my body is telling me something's wrong, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
pay attention. Then we're missing all those red flags and green flags that are so important in helping us screen whether somebody is potentially a healthy partner or not. Right.
Right, right, absolutely. Especially like if you miss those initial signals or those initial cues, then like you said, your brain can like file it away or compute some data and like put it out, and you're like, actually, that has nothing to do with the situation. Like you're creating some situation that doesn't even exist. Versus if you were to actually pick up those cues, if you're tuned into your body, tuned into some level of like body perception, then you can pick those up before it gets to your brain and kind of talk your brain out of it, right? Have your observer tell you, no, girl, that's not what that really means. That's not what that really means. So I love that. I do. I don't know if you do this, but I learned it back in school or something, but the anger thermometer. Have you ever done that one?
Mm.
So it's like just a thermometer, and you have to recognize your first like 3 to 4 cues of when you're getting angry. So like for me, it's like cracking my knuckles or like cracking my neck or like furrowing my brow. And then I know that if I get to number 3 on that, then I have to walk away. So just some way to physically document what
Mhm.
these signals are prior to my brain like computing the data in the wrong kind of fashion, and me reacting to a situation versus responding.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you use
Oh,
any tools like that to help your clients, or like anything where to help them sense or get to know what these cues may be for them?
yeah. So usually in my first module in my group program, we actually no, it's the second one. Anyways, we talk about like our what's called polyvagal theory and this polyvagal map, right? Which is
Mm,
this theory about how we go into fight or flight, which we've all heard of, which is like in our sympathetic nervous system, or this freeze and shutdown response. It also can look like people pleasing when we're in this response, which is more of
mhm,
a parasympathetic response. Um, and it's and I give like a color code of like a stoplight.
mm,
So green is when we're what's called our ventral state. So it's when we're feeling safe and social, calm and regulated. So it's, think about, I don't know, relaxing on a perfect, spring day on a picnic blanket at the park. And you just feel like safe and protected and relaxed, or whatever is like a relaxing image for you. And then we have like the yellow zone, which is the more fight or flight, um, which is, we might experience like that tension, that heart racing, like that's more of what people experience as like anxiety,
yeah.
right? Or like or wanting to like leave a situation. And then we have like that red zone, the red light, which is more of the shutdown response. It's
Mm,
called the dorsal vagal response, and so we can literally freeze, experience not being able to like access our words, And that's something that the brain does so brilliantly to try to help us like not get caught by the saber-toothed tiger, because
Yeah.
we have to remember our bodies are built for not for modern times. Our nervous systems have not evolved yet to kind of the relative safety that most people experience in
Mm,
like at least in the United States. And again, that is debatable because if you're a person of color, like that's
right.
definitely not there. So um our nervous systems are still built for like thinking that we need to survive living in the wild and surviving lions and tigers and bears, right?
Mhm.
Um, so that freeze response is really helpful when if you were like hiding in the woods and like trying not to make a noise because the wolves are trying to find you. But it's not so helpful when you're like trying to set a boundary with your partner or your boss and like all of a sudden like you can't speak, right?
Right, right, right.
So it's understanding kind of these three different levels,
Mm,
and then I have people map like what are your some ways, like you said with your anger thermometer, that your body lets you know that it's in green and yellow or red,
mm,
because state precedes story, as Stephen Porges says. So the state of our nervous system is going to shift the way that our brains think. So the next step, the next column would be, okay, so this is what I'm feeling or experiencing. And then how our thinking gets impacted.
yeah,
And this is where things like CBT can be really
yeah,
helpful. It's like your thoughts affect your feelings, affect your emotions. But what affects our thoughts is our perception.
right.
And what influences our perception is the state of our nervous system. Because my husband can tell me, "Oh, you're gonna wear that shirt today?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, like is there a stain?" Because if I'm in green, like it's not a big deal. I'm like, "Oh my
Right,
God, thank you for telling me. Like there's a stain on this. How embarrassing." But if I'm in yellow and already in that fight or flight state because
right,
I'm stressed with work, he can say the exact same thing the exact same way. And my response is, "Are you saying I'm fat? Like what?
right.
Like you're always judging what I'm wearing." And like I can totally get defensive because when we're in fight, flight, or freeze, it's a different part of our brain that's in the driving
Oh,
seat,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So we're going to get defensive and all of that. Like those what's called cognitive distortions,
Right.
catastrophizing, all or nothing, all of that kicks in once we're in that place.
Right, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. And I really hope that if my community doesn't come and find your modules and work with you in some capacity, because they definitely need this kind of support, that they at least, at the very least, take that nugget for the red, the green, yellow, red. I mean, that was so valuable, so valuable. Thank you. So I have a couple questions from some of the women in the community that I'd like to ask you. So Brianna wants to know, how could someone who is in the middle of a breakup learn to self-soothe and regulate her nervous system?
So first and foremost is that we need to co-regulate before we can self-regulate, and the science shows this.
Mm,
Babies don't self-soothe. Um, Babies just go into red, go into shutdown,
mm,
basically, because their little brains say, crying is not helping me getting my needs met. I need to stop crying and conserve my energy so I don't like cry myself to death, pretty much.
right.
So we know that we don't self-soothe before we get that connection. So if you're going through a breakup or you know that you're going to be coming up on leaving a relationship, shore up your relationships, your friendships. You know, working with a coach, a therapist, doing a free self-help group if that's what you can do, like Codependence Anonymous,
Yeah.
can be really helpful. But really lean into at least a couple of safe, supportive relationships or situations, because we need to co regulate before we can self regulate.
Yeah.
So notice if you can have coffee with a friend, how much easier it might be for you to do your grounding tools, your
Mhm.
regulating tools the rest of that week because you've had that bit of co-regulation first.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Awesome. Yeah, no, I think it's so powerful. I think especially that's the one thing I think that's so beautiful about the way social media is right now. Not that I think you can get really into the whole scroll culture really, really easily, But there's so many opportunities for you to find your tribe and for you to find people that you can at least maybe even have like a coffee Zoom date with if you don't feel comfortable going out in public. Or if you, I know there are a lot of women in my community who, because of narcissistic and toxic relationships, they lost a lot of their community. And so guess what? You're not alone. I met Cassandra online. I met Miriam online. I met Emily on, through, well, asking the universe for her to come into my life. But, so there are so many different areas for
Yeah,
you to find community. And so you can co-regulate while you're trying to figure out how to, like you said, self-soothe after you've co-regulated and found some support and community. So,
absolutely, absolutely. I'm in like this online goddess temple, and I
mhm,
connection there. I joined a book club for women of color. I'm making new friendships there. It's about like just putting yourself out there and taking that
yeah,
risk, and looking at maybe Facebook events or like meetup.com.
yep,
I've had clients like recently sign up for tennis lessons and they're making new friends, or join a women's hiking group in their area and they're making new
mhm,
friends.
mhm.
So it's hard to adult friendship for
Yeah.
sure. Joining a softball league, like whatever. It does take some amount of like taking that risk
Effort.
and reaching out,
Yeah.
putting yourself out there. Yeah, but it can be done.
It can be done. And I think the cool thing is that at least if you feel so nervous doing that, starting in the safety of like an online community
Mhm.
can at least protect you somewhat until you feel really comfortable making those out
Mhm.
of virtual, like in IRL connections that you need more to self-soothe. Because like you had mentioned in the very beginning, we need community, we need connection. That is how our species is developed and built on. That's how you know that you're wealthy, is by the state of your community and the state of your
Mhm.
connections. That's where abundance comes from. So you want to make sure that you take your virtual in real life. But if you got to start somewhere, that's where you can start. All right. So Melissa had a couple questions. She wants to know, how do you approach dating in new relationships when old trauma gets reactivated?
Mm. So I think being aware of what are your triggers and what are the survival patterns that kick into place, because these our survival patterns are usually what causes us difficulty. So if, let's say, we're dating and we're on a date with somebody and they like tell a joke, but it's not something that we really think is funny or that you should joke about. If you grew up with just be quiet and don't make waves and just go along to get along, people please, to not upset somebody, that then the survival pattern is like, when something comes up, I don't speak up, right?
Mm,
So then how that is going to show up in a relationship or in a date is, this person made this kind of inappropriate joke that I didn't really think was funny, but now I'm not saying anything about it. So then they're going to keep doing it,
yep.
and or I think that I'm okay with that. And then in 3 months and 6 months and 3 years, I'm like, oh my God, I like hate this about this person, but so much time has gone on that
Right.
they like think joking about this thing is funny. And now it's like getting to me. Right. So being aware of our survival patterns, identifying those ways that we survived as a kid, but now they're nipping us in the bud. And once we're aware of those survival patterns, then we can start making a plan for, okay, if I notice I tend to not speak up for certain things, what are some strategies or what's a plan? Or even if I don't speak up in the moment because I'm not quite there yet, but I can come back around and say, hey, I just wanted to mention last night, like you joked about this, and I didn't say it in the moment, but like I actually don't think joking about that kind of thing is appropriate, or I really didn't appreciate that, or
Mhm.
whatever it might be, because we're teaching people how to treat us,
Yeah.
whether
Amen.
of it or not, from the first date, from the first actual messages, if we're doing like
Mhm.
a dating app.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so being aware of your survival patterns and making a plan for how to start responding differently.
Yeah, that's so lovely. And, I think because obviously survival patterns And as we know, which is why we do this work, so we can help people kind of get them out of their subconscious, get them out of that unconscious sort of patterning. But if it's something that you know, just start taking inventory of how you did respond to certain things. If you didn't feel comfortable, you know, if you're on a date and you're like, oh, I wish I didn't say that, instead of ruminating over it, ask yourself, well, why did I say that? What does this remind me of? And then you can start to pick out those patterns from your interactions, from your triggers. You know, to me, I feel like triggers, it's been made so clear now that triggers are the opportunity for us to dig into our subconscious. And if we need support, obviously get that support. But you can, once you do this work for a long time, you kind of are like, oh yeah, I was triggered by that comment. Oh, that reminds me of what dad said. Okay, that's why, right? And you can start healing these things on your own. So Melissa also had a question about how do you tell the difference between old trauma being triggered by an unhealthy versus a healthy partner?
Mm, yeah, because even the healthiest relationships are gonna trigger us.
Yep.
They're going to bring things up that are an opportunity for healing.
Yep.
I want to quickly like name that sometimes like people are just being assholes, and your anger is not a trigger. It is a legitimate response,
Yep.
like some messed up situation or somebody disrespecting you. So I want to like say that not everything is a trigger. Sometimes like your anger or your anxiety is like totally valid and justified.
Right.
Like I'm moving this weekend, I'm noticing like I'm feeling stressed. I'm like, okay, yeah, it makes sense because I'm moving this weekend. Like I'm not
Right.
in a trigger or in a trauma spot. So I just want to name that because sometimes I feel like everything on the internet is like breathing. If you're breathing, it's a trauma response.
Right.
Like
So true.
if you're tired today, it's a trauma response. And it's like, no, like, yeah.
Right. Basic
Like,
emotions, they exist for a reason. Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes things just are like
They are.
valid, legitimate, real-time current responses,
Yeah.
right? So I just want to name that. So when we are looking at, okay, somebody is triggering me in my relationship. Now, is this like mean it's unhealthy or not? It really is not about whether a relationship triggers you or not, because like we said, every relationship is going to trigger us. And in oh my God, why can I think of the name of it right now? It's like one of the core theories that I've like learned and that I use. In Getting the Love You Want, that the Hendrixes, they're like this couple. I can't think of the name of the theory right now.
Oh gosh.
Um,
Oh my. Oh, the big, like the upper limit problem. That isn't that the.
no, it's I can't think of it right now. If I think about it, I'll let you know.
Okay.
But the book is called Getting the Love You Want, and the authors are the Hendrixes. I
Yeah.
just can't think of like the name of their theory right now.
Okay.
They even say like the point of relationship is to trigger your stuff so you can heal it. Like
Right.
that is like a sacred thing, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And once we look at that, like, oh, this is an opportunity. So how we can tell though if it's a safe, if it's a healthy relationship or not, because both relationships are going to trigger you, is that once you recognize that you've been triggered, like how is the relationship able to hold that or not? If
Right.
you so for an example, like, okay, I'm triggered by something, I bring it to my partner, like say, hey, that really triggered me, or hey, that upset me, or hey, like, people, I don't know, growing up used to yell a lot and it just really like upsets me when you yell. It's how your partner responds to that is going to tell you, like, is this a healthy relationship or not?
Yep.
Because an unhealthy person is not going to be able to hold it, validate it, or maybe make some adjustments to their behavior in to be sensitive to like your trauma history.
Right.
Where a healthy person is going to be able to validate it even if they don't agree or understand, be like, I get it, I'm so sorry. An example, the other like 2 weeks ago, maybe my husband like just said something randomly really loud, like just to be funny, and he like slammed his hands on the table, but it scared the crap out of me. I'm living with CPTSD. I
Mhm.
like jumped a foot straight in the air, and he's just like, oh my God, your eyes just got so big. And I was like, yeah, like a total startle response.
Yeah.
I was like, I have CPTSD. You can't like do that. You can't joke with me like that. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, okay. And then we were at the gas station like the next day, and I was on my phone, and he goes, and he said something like, I'm gonna make a loud noise right now, or something, like just letting you know.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, thank you, because he saw I wasn't paying attention. Um, I think he was gonna have to like slam the door or something. And that was just nice. Like he,
yeah.
took that in, was willing to adjust
Mm,
to like my need, right?
mhm.
And the relationship could hold that feedback without him having to get defensive or, well, this is just how I am and you just have to deal with it. Like,
Right, right.
right. So it's not about whether you're triggered or not, because like that's life is going to trigger you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about how does your partner
Hold
respond to
space.
it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I knew that my husband was different than any of the other people that I had dated, because all of these things where I was kind of expecting something to go awry or wrong, or like that, the way that I responded to something would push him away. He just stayed put. He held space. He asked the right questions. You know what I mean? And that's kind of, I would say that's like the same thing that I try to teach my clients too. It's like, look for those moments like where you're pleasantly surprised that you don't have to like sit with your like, you don't have to experience a shoe dropping, because it's not going to, right? There is this, I don't know, there's just when you find the right person, they meet you where you are. And even if you trigger them, they always come back, right? There's always that, like, I just love that example that you used. I think it's so perfect. So beautiful, beautiful. Okay, Yvonne wanted to know, how do you handle resistance to the new behaviors that you're trying to integrate, after you've been, dealing with some toxic, sort of traits, and you're on the cleanup, you're in your cleanup crew right now. How do you deal with that resistance that's, especially from a body nervous system perspective?
Yeah. So meeting resistance with kindness, and even
Mm,
working with that as an affirmation. I meet resistance with kindness. Resistance or having like a relapse of like some kind of behavior or something, like, I'm trying to work on not yelling and I yelled at my kids. Oh my God. Right.
mm,
Or even just feeling like resistance to like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to like go walking every day and I'm having resistance to that.
right.
That is your brain working exactly how it's supposed to. Again, back to the brain. Its number one job is to keep you safe, keep you alive. And the way it thinks the best way to keep you safe is to keep you small, or keep you doing the same thing that you've been doing, because what you've been doing has kept you alive this long, 30
Right.
years, 35 years, like whatever. So why change it now? Right.
Mm,
And so acknowledging when you feel that resistance of like, okay, my brain is doing exactly what it needs to do right now to keep me safe. Where can we first of all insert some compassion
mm,
and kindness, even some gratitude for our
yeah.
resistance, because it's just our brain trying to keep us safe. And once we stop kind of trying to fight the resistance or judge it,
Mm,
and we are able to kind of even soften around it, then we're able to kind of say, okay, like, get ourselves a little bit more in that clean state with this. Like, okay, well, what can I do? Maybe I don't feel like taking a walk today, but can I go put my feet in the grass? Can I go sit
mm,
outside in the sun? Can I put on some music, and kind of dance a little bit while I'm standing here and doing the dishes? Like,
mm,
where it creates some openness for us to do what we can. Because
yeah.
sometimes the big change or the thing we're supposed to do, it is too much of a stretch. If you ask me, Brittany, to get up and go run a marathon today, I would hurt myself. Like, that is too
Girl.
much. Like, I have totally embodied the COVID quarantine couch potato lifestyle.
Yeah.
Hey, it's where I'm at today.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we get stuck because we're expecting to have to change too much too fast. And that's not how the nervous
Mhm.
system likes to change either. The nervous system likes little baby steps,
Mm,
because we need to show our brains, hey, look, change is safe. Like, I am going to set a boundary maybe first with, I don't know, an acquaintance or some lady at church or whatever that
mhm.
I'm not that close to. to show my nervous system that it's safe for me to set boundaries as I build that muscle up to setting a boundary with my mom or
Yeah.
setting a boundary with my partner, which is
Right.
like feels a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say, like, when working with resistance, looking at it as just like the new behavior is a muscle. Maybe we need to start with a lower weight. So whatever you're feeling resistance to, starting small. And all the science and research shows, there was even this book that was like a bestseller last year called Atomic Habits.
Mm.
It just really reinforced like making small, consistent change over time to build up to like the big change. So
Yeah.
when you're feeling resistance, it's just it's like, oh, there goes my brain trying to keep me safe. Doing exactly what
Yeah.
it's doing right now. Okay.
Mm.
And meeting that with tenderness and kindness first and foremost.
Yeah, I love it. That's so beautiful. Kindness and compassion. And I even kind of heard a little bit like give it once you recognize that resistance, it almost gives you an opportunity to find something similar that would bring you joy, right? And so, like you said, bare feet in the grass, or maybe I'll go for a swim today, or, do yoga, like just finding another thing that's kind of in the same lane that would bring you joy. Yeah, that was such a beautiful answer. Okay. Andy wants to know, how can we help our partners understand our trauma while not blaming them for our triggers? Which I think is kind of similar to what Melissa's question was, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's first us getting really clear on
Mhm.
like, A, B, and C, or like the 1 + 2 + 3 of our own story, of our own survival patterns, and taking responsibility of it, saying, and part of taking responsibility for ourselves is communicating with our partners. Part of me taking responsibility for myself was telling my partner in that moment that he startled me, like, hey, I am living with CPTSD. I have like, this startle response. Like my heart was pounding out of my chest. So like, you can't do that, and setting that boundary, that's taking care of myself,
Mm,
right? Like saying like, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm experiencing. And this is how you can help me,
yeah.
right? Without being like, you shouldn't be doing that, like blah, blah, blah. But it's easy to do that when we're in fight or flight, to like go
Right.
on the attack, because our brain thinks, oh my God, a bear is attacking you. You must fight back, right?
Right.
So it's taking time and practice to get to that place where, like, in the moment of a trigger, I'm able to be like, hey, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like you said, you need to kind of take that break and take some space. But eventually to come around and kind of explain, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, hey, this is why I just went through this. This is how you can support me next time, or next time you see me like this is what I'm needing.
Hmm.
And just to like inform them of like what you need, particularly in cis hetero relationships, like where if you're a woman with a man, men like need some, like that kind of direction
Yes.
and
Yes,
like
they
tell me
do.
what to do to help you, right?
Yeah.
With this situation. It makes them feel like, okay, next time I'm seeing you in this place, like this is how I can respond, or you need a hug, or you need to be left alone, and
Right.
like
Right.
to game plan for next time too.
Yeah, yeah, no, okay, that's good. That's so good. I'm curious, do you have any like techniques that you use, whether it's breathing or certain type of meditation or mantra that you use to help people, or that you've used on your own, on yourself, to help yourself, calm down when being triggered in the moment?
Yeah. So a really simple breathing technique that I teach, because there's so many breathing techniques out there,
Right.
and ultimately like experiment and find the one that works for you. Certain breathing techniques also are better depending on what color you're in.
Mm,
Um, if you are in yellow and feeling in fight or flight, like a box breathing technique where you're inhaling for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, holding for 4, and repeating that,
mhm,
not feel supportive. I know when I'm feeling anxious, I don't want to hold my breath. That
mm,
makes me feel even more constricted and anxious. If you're telling me to do a breathing technique that I need to hold my breath, I'm like, mm-mm. Like, I need to breathe. I need oxygen. Like,
yeah.
what are we doing? Right. So different techniques may work for you depending on what state that you're in.
Mm,
But a really quick one, and we can do it together a couple
okay.
times here,
Yeah.
is a 2-8 breath. So a quick deep inhale through the nose into the belly for a count of 2. And then the slow controlled exhale out the mouth, like we're breathing out through a straw for a count of 8. Big inhale. One more time. And then just noticing any subtle shifts or changes from before and after.
Yeah.
And with any technique, it's always good to do like a pre-test and a post-test, right? Like noticing my level of stress or anxiety or panic on a 1 to 10 scale, and then using a technique or a tool and noticing what's the number after. Did it go up? Did it go down? We're doing field research here, just figuring out like what techniques and tools work best for us.
Yep. Yep. Thank you so much. That was so good. And I love the fact that you brought it back to the colors and the states, because it's true. Certain breathing techniques don't work. One size does not fit all. And it is important to understand, like, where are you on this, like in your heightened response in order to choose what breathing may actually feel better for you. Because I've also seen where sometimes these breathing techniques actually cause people to have more anxiety, right? You feel more constricted if you do the 4-4-4. So yeah, just recognizing if you feel more hypervigilant after, like you feel like a little bit more sensory overload after breathing like that, then choose a different technique.
Exactly.
All right.
And I know like breath work is really popular, especially
Yeah.
like the Wim Hof method that you're
No,
like,
I can't even do it.
I can handle it. Like I've done it and it has been very, very powerful for me,
Right.
but I do it maybe once. I used to say once a month, but it's really like once every 2 to 3 months I'll do it, because it is so much comes up for me, but it's also so activating and so exhausting.
Yeah.
That, I don't know, some people are like, do it every day. And I'm like, that is like not a trauma informed practice or recommendation. So just because something you're like hearing a bunch of people doing breath work or doing Kundalini yoga or doing whatever hip and trendy, like self-healing thing,
Yeah.
again, like talk to your provider, listen to your body. Even talking about breath work, I'm like,
I
nope.
know I have anxiety too. I was like, oh God, no. But it's so, I love that because I was actually going to inform our community, like, it's so important. Like, can't you see the difference between talking to someone who may be trained in certain areas of these sorts of things versus actually someone who actually is really knowledgeable, really, really knows, has been working with people with trauma and has healed their own trauma. Trauma-informed care is so important. Not everybody has the same training, yet a lot of people will claim that they can. So you just want to make sure that whenever you are seeking out a provider, which is so important to me, I think it's absolutely essential if you do come from a trauma background, like you shouldn't be doing this alone.
Yeah.
But just making sure that you find a provider who actually has some like actual training in trauma will make your experience that much more supported, on your journey. So
Yeah, and has done their own work. Because a weekend trauma workshop isn't trauma informed. You may understand some more things about the nervous system, but has this person done their own work, like we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
And do they practice self-care? Have they been in therapy or had providers themselves? And you can absolutely, when you're reaching out to work with a provider, ask them these questions.
Yes.
If you have a problem with you asking them, or are defensive, or are like, well, why are you asking that? Try to turn it around on you. Like, that's not trauma informed. Like, next.
Right. Exactly. Be discerning, even though if your trauma is going to try to get you to be like, just choose anything or anybody because you just want relief. Be discerning, we give you permission to be discerning, to
Mm.
choose, with more informed care yourself, right? It's like kind of like the shift that you're making. All right, final question from Andy. How do you understand the difference between a trauma response versus reality? And we kind of were touching on this a little bit before about like, well, sometimes, like somebody pissed you off and you're just angry, and that's like reality versus, it being like, oh, I'm pissed off because my mother reminded me of this person and blah, 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 right?
Mhm. Yeah, so there's an old saying which I don't love it, but we need to like invent something else. That if it's hysterical, it's historical, which
Mm,
means that if you are kind of overreacting or underreacting to a situation, then that is a sign
mm,
that there's like a thread there that you want to keep pulling on and seeing if it's connected to something. Again, something I talked to a lot of clients about over this last year with just COVID and social justice issues was, hey, like your anger or frustration about what's happening in the world is totally valid. Like, it doesn't mean it's a trigger. Like, if you're seeing injustices or if you have lost somebody or you are having to stay inside and give up your life because of quarantine, like your experience totally makes sense.
mm,
Um, and again, it's like that example of my husband with my shirt, right?
right.
That like, depending on what state I'm in. But when I'm noticing that my response seems to be kind of bigger than needed for the situation, um, that to me is a clue like there might be something else here. And
Yeah.
that goes back to noticing how our body responds. Again, you go on a date with somebody and they're like, yeah, I had a good time, but I'm not interested in a second date. How does your body respond to that? Like, are you disappointed, sad, like a little bummed out? Like, sure. But if it's like, oh my God, I'm unlovable, no one's ever going to want me, I'm depressed and in bed for a week over this, like that might be a clue that there's something, bigger there that
Yeah,
needs.
there's a candlestick behind the closet door is probably what you need to. Absolutely, absolutely. Actually, I've never heard that before. Hysterical. If you're hysterical, then it's historical.
If it's
Um,
hysterical, it's historical. Yeah.
yeah, that's something that's new. But yeah, it's so true because um and it's hard to discern sometimes, I think, for some people, like, am I overreacting or am I reacting? Like, is this normal or am I over? Well, if you have some people in your life that are safe, that you trust, ask them to help give you some feedback. It's completely okay to get some feedback from the people in your lives, right? Going
Yeah.
back to that community piece.
Yes.
So, just to help you kind of discern what overreacting would be versus what not. Because I know that when I was in the middle of some traumatic experiences, traumatic relationships, I didn't know the difference between me overreacting or actually just responding to my environment. So getting that feedback can be really helpful. So yeah.
Mhm.
Um, okay. So since we are getting to the end of our time here, I want to know if there's anything that you really want to share and leave with our community, something that you just really feel like they should know from all of your studies. Pretty broad.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't overemphasize building your mind body connection. And that is, that old cheesy saying, like the longest journey is the one from the head to the heart, but like it is so true.
Mm,
When we've experienced trauma, whether, any kind of trauma, lack of safety, lack of consistency, lack of attunement and nurturing from our caregivers, so many women come to work with me and they're just like cut off here at the neck and they're just living
yeah.
in their heads and they're trying to analyze things and logic their way out of situations. And Albert Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it, right?
Mhm.
I think about like our trauma brains have created these situations or have gotten into these relationships or jobs or romantic relationships. We pick them from a certain place in our life and our healing. And now as we start to heal, it's like, oh, oh, like, okay, maybe I need to rethink some of these agreements or situations or set boundaries.
Yeah.
But we're trying to like figure it out all up here when the answers are in the body,
Right.
and working with a provider to help you feel safe to get into your body and then to start understanding how to read your body signals and trust yourself and trust your intuition, is huge.
Yeah.
So, trauma informed yoga, dance, working with the somatic practitioner.
Mm.
There's so many different kinds of body work out there, but slowly and safely feeling your body and connecting with your body. I always tell people we're going to go in on the stairs of the pool. I'm not going to throw you in the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually re-traumatizing ourselves. Like I said, like if you're new in your trauma healing journey, I don't suggest doing like the intense breathwork stuff. I just,
Right.
you know, we have to just be really careful and intentional
Yeah.
with this process. And that's where working with a provider that can really tell and help you see like what state you're in and how much you can handle or not. And sometimes the work is just being like, I've done the best I can do today, and like that's going to have to be enough.
Right.
And having
Absolutely.
that compassion. So not mind body connection and self compassion first and foremost. Always are.
So good. Well, my dog started barking, so apparently it's time to go. But where can all of our community and members and people listening, where can they find you to work with you, to see your programs, to follow you, and just immerse themselves in what you do?
So you can check out my website. I have a blog and I have a ton of videos on there. That's CassandraSolano.com.
Okay.
Or you can connect with me on Instagram. I'm on actually a little Instagram break till the end of June, but I'll be back on June 1st. And you can find me on Instagram at Head and Heart Coaching. I just changed the name, which I'm really excited about.
I love it. It's such a
Yeah,
beautiful name, beautiful depiction of you. Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much.
Mhm.
And I'm usually on there just like teaching. Again, I have so many videos on my Instagram TV, just hours and hours of content information, coping skills, all the things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Perfect. Beautiful. I'll make sure to leave both Head and Heart Coaching Instagram handle and CassandraSolano.com in the show notes and in the comment section so that you guys can find her and work with her if she feels like a good fit. But again, this whole trauma-informed care, like just mind, body, soul, get connected, get centered, rewatch this video, listen to this podcast multiple times, and start doing some of the things that she suggested. I mean, she gave us a lot of really beautiful tools. Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Yeah.
Truly, so grateful, so
Welcome.
honored.
Mhm.
Good luck with your move.
Thank
I
you.
know it'll go swimmingly. It'll be so smooth and perfect.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. And
yeah,
I hope you enjoy your travels as well.
thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay. Oops, hang on.